Mike Bohn, joined today by a very special guest, the founder and CEO of Paradigm Sports, Mr. Audie Attar. And Audie, I know you don't do many of these, man. So first of all, I just want to say I really appreciate you taking the time. And how are things with you?
I'm doing well, Mike. Thanks for having me on the show. Appreciate you. Doing well, doing well. Coming off a huge win for Leon Edwards, and the team's rocking and rolling. So it's a very, very, very good time to be part of the Paradise Sports team.
Yeah, man, 3 UFC champions right now. That's got to be, like this is probably one of the best times you guys have had. I know it's always been, consistently good, but to have this going on, just what does that kind of say about the kind of success, your roster is having at the moment?
Well, I think it speaks volumes to not only the fortune that we have of working with these great athletes, but the great job that my team's doing. We are not only building a culture of excellence, but it's a winning culture, and it's now showing through our hard work, not only in the results that we're driving for our clients, but even the recruiting that we're doing and the talent that we're signing early on. And it's a very exciting time to be part of the team. And we're very fortunate for these athletes to entrust in us and to be a small part of their journey and to help guide them to success from a business perspective in their respective sports. So I'm very, very just honored to be a part of their team, but more importantly, I'm very proud of the team that we built. I'm very, very proud of all the hard work that we put in day out, and now reaping the rewards of that in different ways. So.
Yeah, and I want to get a little bit into, some of the agents that you have and stuff, but I'm curious, like right now, how hands-on would you say you are with like, the clients you have and just like the MMA side of your business as a whole? Because I know things are flourishing, you're expanding beyond MMA, which we'll get into as well. So like, what would you kind of say your day-to-day is like right now?
I mean, I'm very much involved in the day-to-day parts of our business. I think for us as a company, we're truly a team. So even if it comes down to contract negotiation, and if it's one of our lead managers on a specific client, we are all huddling up as a team to be able to work on a respective contract or respective negotiation, because I think there's a wealth of experience that the collective team brings together. And so it's very important to me that I'm there for each one of my teammates, supporting them and helping them critically think through things, researching things. So I'm very much hands-on. And obviously, as the CEO of the company, I'm also focusing on the macro aspects of our business, not just from a MMA management perspective, but then all the different respective sports that we're in our media and our IP business, and in our business ventures that we are launching and investing and acquiring, if you will. But then also as it relates to operations and finance and all the other elements of a business. And so, and that also includes in investing in our own people and developing our own people as it relates to our talent to ensure that they're becoming the best versions of themselves, and they're constantly evolving and growing and achieving their own personal goals as well as the company's goals. So I think my involvement's still very heavy. It's just, we also are a team, and we've built a very strong team, and we've this is our 12th year in business, so we've experienced a lot, the good, bad, the ugly, and we always end up coming out on the other side of it much stronger and much wiser. And I'm proud of us for how we handle all these things, the good, the bad, the ugly, and where we are today. And I think everybody on the team feels like we're just getting started, and that's a very, very, very promising position to be in.
Yeah, that's got to be exciting. So you mentioned a dozen years in. Where do you think, you are right now compared to when you started this, like your vision and your goals? Would you say you're on track, ahead of where you want to be? Is there some things that you haven't been able to tick off the list? How would you kind of define it?
I think we're on track. I think when I went back and looked at the original business plan, and I remember that business plan, there were a lot of people that laughed at me for how ambitious it was, and in focusing on on the advocacy that was really in I would say in my DNA as a former athlete. I really wanted to fight for athletes in more than one way, and I felt that it wasn't just transactional, right? You had to put your heart and soul into something, When I look at what we've done in being the best in class from a management perspective in these high growth sports that we're in, building media and content IP in and around our athletes, our ecosystem, and then even building business ventures that we're able to disrupt sectors that have long been controlled and owned by these corporate juggernauts. We've done that, and so it's just about continuously innovating and evolving and trying to differentiate, which I think we continue to do. And I'm excited about what we're doing and what we have ahead of us, because our ambitions are bolder and they're bigger than ever. So I'm looking forward to what the next 12 years has in store for us.
And I know you have, a number of agents and everything. Want to give them all their due respect, but I do want to ask about Tim Simpson, who's a guy who's been getting a lot of his flowers lately, especially with Leon's win and everything. He's a guy, at the time you kind of put him in this position of power on the MMA front. Specifically, he wasn't even 30 years old yet. What did you see out of Tim that you kind of felt he was a good fit and what he understood about, the needs of the athletes and how to work with, these big organizations and be able to get deals done? Because he seems to be one of the most respected managers in the industry right now.
Tim Simpson, I feel, is hands down the best manager in MMA. And I've seen Tim grow tremendously. And the one thing I would say, what really instilled a level of the level of faith that I had in his ability was his relentless effort, his natural business acumen, but his curiosity to learn and research anything, even more, despite how much he may have already known about something, right, or a subject matter. So he's always a student of the game, and he's never a know-it-all, right? Not only that, but his temperament to be able to roll through the highs and the lows at it with it, at an even keel, if you will, is amazing. And I think that on top of that, he came to our company during what I would say even some dark times where we didn't have necessarily good people that were on board, and he was able to see all that, and he was able to, through that, fight through, let's call it, any of the negativity or the trials and tribulations that we were facing, and emerge out of it not only a better person, but truly someone that was shining through his work product and his results, right? And the energy and the culture that he contributed to the team, which in turn was a positive one, right? And I think that it's been such a pleasure to watch him grow, and he's a partner in the firm now. For us, that was something for me in my own experiences that was important, is that anybody that earned it will earn it. It's an up or out model, and Tim is not just a manager or an employee, if you will, but rather he's a partner in the firm, and he's a huge part of Paradigm Sports. He's part of the DNA, and he's a huge component as to why we're super successful today. So I'm very proud of him. Long may it continue. I know that we both feel we're just getting started, which is great. And he's now even stepped into a leadership role where he actually manages an entire division. And there's, let's call it a dozen people that have to report and work with him on a daily basis. And that's only going to grow as we continue to invest in our infrastructure, which we constantly do.
When you look around the industry right now, what do you kind of think are maybe like some of the flaws when it comes to MMA management? Because I know some fighters are saying right now, like, I don't even need management in the sport. I can do it myself. I'm better off this way or this way. Like, what do you think is the most important part of either something that's being done wrong out there, or what you guys are maybe bringing to the table that doesn't exist elsewhere?
I think for us, we try to focus on what's important, and what we can control, what we feel is important, what we can control. So I don't spend a lot of time thinking of what other managers are doing or not doing, right? But rather, I do believe that there's a lot of improvement that could be had as it relates to fighter compensation, benefits, as it relates to even mobility and being able to test the market to get fair market value. And so all these different things that I think we've always fought for and we continue to fight for are still there. I think the the reemergence of some competitors is a good thing, but someone asked me, is that sustainable? I said, look, there's always been some competitors that have come and gone. UFC is still the premier promotion, and that doesn't look like it's going to change anytime soon. And so having these, second and third and fourth promotions that exist in the marketplace is good, but they too, employ some of the same strategies to prevent a fighter from testing the market, right? And so in turn, they're not any better, but they claim to be different, right? And so with that being said, I think that what all managers should do is really continue to advocate for their clients and continue to try to, have difficult conversations with these promoters. And I do think that the promoters over time will respect it. They may not like it, but I know that the real ones, they do care about the fighters. They do care about the sport, right? It's not just a business for them. So I think if we are able to have healthy conversations about uncomfortable subjects, it's only going to push the envelope further. And in my opinion, allow for success both for the promoters and the athletes at the same time. As rising tides raises all ships, in my opinion. So I think that managers have to be willing to have difficult conversations about uncomfortable subjects in the spirit of athlete advocacy, in the spirit of promoting and growing the sport we all love, whether you're on the promotion side or whether you're on the athlete management side.
Was there a learning curve for you at all on that front, like in figuring out, how to navigate these relationships with the promoters and make sure, you're balancing everything equally and making sure, of course, you want to put the clients first and everything like that, but making sure that you have a good enough relationship that you can have those difficult conversations and be able to get, the best for your
I,
athletes.
I would dare to say that it's you're learning every day, and I would say that because we've been such staunch advocates for our athletes, I don't think we're necessarily the most popular with the promoters, right? But at the end of the day, we still have dialogue. We still have a level of respect with them. Behind our back, they may say some stuff about us, but that means we're doing a good job, in my opinion, right? So I think so long as we're always able to handle things with the level of integrity, um, they may not like us, but I think they're going to understand, because I do believe that these promoters, for the most part, do care about the sport, and deep down they do care about the athletes. But we may disagree from a business perspective as to certain specifics, including but not limited to compensation, if you will, right? So with that being said, I think that if you're able to continue to pound the pavement and have time on your side to show, hey, look, the body of work that we've done is truly rooted in advocacy, and it's never been to screw a promoter over or whatnot. It's really just to maximize this athlete's career, because at the end of the day, the athletes risk everything when they go in there, right? And ultimately, that's not forever. And so we need to make sure that they're protected, not just from a compensation perspective, but in all facets of what we try to push for as it relates to their advocacy.
And obviously, it's a case by case thing these days. But you mentioned, there's various promoters, there's more opportunities. If you had a fighter who is kind of nearing the end of their contract, and again, I know it's kind of different for each person. Do you think it's in their best interest to kind of explore free agency at this point? I know the UFC in particular
Well,
is kind of, yeah. No, sorry, go
it
ahead.
no, it's just, I think it's a depends. It depends is the real answer, right? I think if you're able to do enough research and understand the market. And I think that we're very fortunate. We've done so many deals across several promotions. So we feel, and we have our own formulaic approach to doing our own, let's call it contract prep heading into negotiation. If you feel you're going to receive fair market value without hitting free agency, then you don't need to hit free agency. But if you think your fair market value is at a certain level and you're not able to achieve that level during the exclusive negotiation period, well, then you may want to hit free agency. So that's why I think it depends. And I never say that it's a one size fit all answer. It's not, right? But that is a true approach to how I feel all managers should approach their negotiation with the respective promotion. Oftentimes I think I see too often is that it's a kind of a haggling, like you're at a flea market, and it needs a little bit more thought than that, right? Obviously, as the career is younger, and maybe the economic indicators are not as evident, meaning the person doesn't drive pay-per-view buys, significant social media analytics, etc. It may be, and let's call it a shorter research and contract prep, if you will. But nonetheless, it should still require a certain level of thought because this is their life that you're tasked with representing them in achieving the highest level of compensation and results, right?
Yeah, and you've obviously, had the time in the sport where you've got to work with these various eras of the UFC, the Fertitta era, and now, the Endeavor era. What would you say is kind of the difference behind the scenes, or is there not much because you're still dealing, with the Hunters and the Danas and the Shawns and the Nick?
I think for in certain respects it's the same because at the end of the day, the UFC is still its own entity, and although they're under the Endeavor umbrella, Ari and Endeavor allow that company and that business to run as it should because it's been a successful business as its own. Otherwise, why would they have bought it, right? I think there's obviously synergies that are created and shared resources that they've implemented, if you will, maybe from the back end of the business, but from the front end of the business, for the most part, it's been about the same, right? I do think that as the UFC has grown in success, it's allowed for everybody to mature. So I've seen growth on the UFC's part, even in how we operate with one another, and I welcome that, and I think that that's something that's going to continue to happen so long as we're both in the business, and I don't see either of us getting out of the business. We both should continue to evolve, not only from a business perspective, but also an operational perspective, and even the lines of communication as well, right? Which allow us to even then tackle even more difficult conversations that are really in the spirit of not only progressing and advocating for our clients, but really pushing the sport forward as well.
If I was to ask you, the most difficult deal that you've been able to push over the finish line, on the MMA side so far, is there one that stands out?
All of them. they, they all seem to be the toughest one at that point in time. I think there's a funny thing. We were reflecting back with I was speaking to one of my business partners, Keli Rainford, who's our president, and Tim as well. And I remember Tim had said something to him when we were getting ready to walk out for Mayweather McGregor. And he's like, we had achieved this huge, 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 huge uh, uh, accomplishment. And it was a goal that seemed almost impossible at the time, and nobody believed, and all these different roadblocks. And I remember, he told me, Tim said to him, Keli, you're just coming into our business now. I mean, this is the pinnacle. I don't know if it gets any better than this. And we constantly keep wowing ourselves and the things that we're doing and the deals that we're getting done, and that's part of the whole. I think that the special secret sauce, if you will, that we have at Paradigm Sports is that we just never allow ourselves to have a ceiling. Right, sky's the limit in what you could achieve if you really really dream and work towards it. But more importantly, understand that we're very lucky too to have clients that entrust in us, that give us that substance to be able to go and push the envelope, if you will. So yeah, I think they're all hard, to answer your question.
Yeah, the next one's the toughest one, but you mentioned May Mac there. We just had the 5-year anniversary of that, this past weekend. Is it like kind of a trip to you that even happened? I mean, you look back at the photos and the footage and everything that just comes out from that weekend. It's just almost surreal that that all came together when it did. Do you have like something that kind of still stands out to you to this day, whether it was in the build up or the night of the fight or the aftermath, just from that entire process that unfolded almost 5 years ago now?
I think when I think back at it, I'm proud, but I can't help to feel that there's unfinished business because there's so many things you wish you would have done differently. For me, obviously thinking of it from a business perspective and how we could have optimized something or done something differently here or there. And I know if Conor as a competitor, he's thinks back, I didn't run the entire camp, I need da. So you always play the film back, so to speak, right, and say, where could I have gotten better? What could I have done better? And I think that that's what, in my opinion, is what a high level competitor and a winner does, right? Is that you truly learn from every experience by watching the film and being critical, but then ensuring that if you get that chance again, or if you see something similar, that you apply those lessons on a go forward basis. So I think that it all still to this day, 5 years later, it feels like it was just yesterday, first and foremost, and second of all, it all felt, uh, you know, a bit surreal, right? But at the same time, it was what was meant to be, right? And so it was a great experience. And now to see, the trend of these crossover fights and exhibitions, it's fun to see that it started somewhere, and now it's just like a commonplace where everybody's trying to do it, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned unfinished business there. Do you feel like that's a feeling that's gonna stick with you till the end of time, or is there? I know there's been like some random rumors out there. I don't know if they've ever been, substantiated or where they come from or anything. Do you think this is something that could ever, part two could ever happen again?
You never say never, right? I mean, at the end of
Right.
the day, nobody thought part one was going to happen. Right now, we're focused on a lot of other things, so it's not something that is even on the horizon as far as we're concerned right now. But you never say never.
Yeah, and let's talk about some things that are on the horizon with Connor. It comes out that he's going to be, a significant part of this Roadhouse remake. Just tell me how that deal came together and how you think kind of Connor dipping his toe into the Hollywood world is going to, what that's going to do for him in terms of like his, popularity and just everything that he has going for him.
Yeah, no, listen, that movie, we're really excited about, and Connor's really excited about this opportunity. And over the years, we've had so many Hollywood opportunities come our way that it just wasn't the right time. And so, we said no to a lot of big movies and big shows that we had the opportunity to be a part of at the time. That it just didn't make sense. And this one just checked all the boxes. First Brad Slater actually gave me a call from Endeavor, and he told me about the movie. He said, "Look, I want you to speak to Joel Silver." And Joel Silver is the producer, legendary producer, Matrix, Sherlock Holmes, Lethal Weapon, Die Hard. Even the original Roadhouse. I mean, the list goes on. Predator. So he's a legend. So I when he said, "Yeah, speak to Joe Silver," um, I said, "Sure, no problem. I'm happy to speak with him." At the end of the day, got on the phone with him and really loved to hear about his process and how he works. And the director is Doug Lineman, who was the director of the Bourne identity movies and other amazing action movies. And so then to start to hear about who else was involved, from script writers to even the stunt team, and then Jake Gyllenhaal. And so all these different elements started to really, you know, uh, really pique my interest to say this could be a natural alignment for Connor to step in. He's never acted. I mean, I know he's done commercials, and he did that short for Pegasus when he did that with John Lovitz, that we filmed years ago for NBC. But this would be the first real acting role, and everything that I was learning from Joel Silver was warming me up to the idea. And then Joel and I got to spend some time together, getting to know each other, learning more about him, more about the process, more about the film, and it just felt right. And so then we pitched it to Connor, right? At the end of the day, and he's the one that ultimately has to believe that he's the one that's going to be acting. And what I try to do is really understand if it makes sense, if he's going to if it's going to pique his interest. And so it did. And he hit it off again with Doug, with Joel. and liked the script, and we're in the process now, and it's a work in progress. All the different things that have to happen for it to come to come to life, if you will. It doesn't just happen overnight. There's reworks on the scripts. There's rehearsals. There's script reads, and then we get ready to leave here in a couple weeks to go and actually start the filming. And so it's an exciting opportunity. I think that he's gonna crush it. I think anything Conor puts his mind to, he crushes it. And he's leaned into the process now, and I think that this is the beginning of something very special for him. I think he's a very he's an entertainer. People love watching him, not just fight as an athlete, but they love watching his press conferences, his interviews, and he's just an entertainer. And so I think that if he applies himself the same way he does in his athletic career and his business career, he's going to find a lot of success in this career. And that's one of the things that we're looking to build. It's not just him as talent, but also from a business perspective as well. So it's exciting. It's a mix of creativity, arts, business, and this one should be an amazing one. So we're really excited about it.
Was there a conversation that you guys had to have when this opportunity came up that, like, hey, it seems like, from what he tweets and the videos he posts, like he is keen to get back in there and fight again. Did this fit in smoothly to his timeline to return? Was it, something that said, hey, you got to look at this before you look at the return? What was the conversation there?
No, I think that's a great point that you raised, and I think given the injury and how severe it was, right? There's no point in rushing back to compete. Now, here's the thing: he's a competitor. He wants to compete. He wants to prove himself, right? He wants to prove how great he still is as an athlete. For me, I always say, look, you don't have to prove anything to anybody, which he knows. But as an athlete and a competitor, he wants to get in there to compete, right? He's proven and he's set records. He has enough money. He doesn't need to do it for all that, right? And that's the part that I think makes him so special, is that he's such a high level competitor that he wants to go out there and prove himself right, more importantly. So with that being said, is it smart to rush back from a gruesome injury like he had, where his leg was literally hanging by the skin? No, there's no point in rushing back and to prove what, right? If you're going to do it right, take your time. More importantly, when you have all these other opportunities and obligations, you get to focus on those while you allow yourself to recover and to come back on your timetable, not anybody else's timetable, and to come back and do it right how you want to do it, not how anybody else wants to do it. And that's the one thing we keep reminding him, because sometimes as a competitor, you potentially could even rush back too soon, and that doesn't make any sense. Not for him, because he holds all the cards. If he never wanted to come back again, that doesn't say anything, right? He's accomplished what 99.99% of the athletes in the sport will never accomplish, right? And that's just the hard, cold facts. And for him, the one thing I try to keep reiterating to him is you do it on your timeline. And he knows that, but sometimes you just need your team to remind you what you know, right?
Yeah, and you mentioned, all those accomplishments and accolades. What do you feel like he wants still out of the fight game at this point? I mean, I'm sure he doesn't want that last image of him being, stretchered out of the octagon with the broken leg. But on top of that, does it seem like he still has goals and things he wants to accomplish? What do you feel like still drives him on the fighting side?
First and foremost, he loves the sport. And I think that's the one thing that's very special about him, is why it's allowed him to reach a level of success that, again, most fighters aspire to achieve. He loves it, right? The second part is he's a competitor. Of course. I mean, that's you could answer your own question if it will put yourself in issues. Would you want that to be your last fight? No. So if you were a high level competitor, what are you going to do? You're going to go and create the ending that you want to create, right? And that's why people fell in love with Conor McGregor, because he'd always dare to speak his dreams and pursue them and die on his sword if he had to achieve them, right? And so that's the same Conor McGregor that exists today. It doesn't matter how many zeros he has in his bank account, or how many championships and records he set in the sport, is he still wants to go out there and achieve more. And does he have more ambitions and goals that he wants to achieve? Absolutely. And so I think that that's what makes it so special and so intriguing. And it's going to be an interesting story. And I do believe it's going to be the greatest comeback in sports history. So I think that's what makes it even more appealing, is that it's playing out in real time as now social media exists, as he tells you what he wants to do, as he is again speaking out his own goals, his own dreams, and he's daring to go out and pursue them for everybody to watch and witness.
So when that time ultimately comes and you guys come to the decision that he's ready to fight and pick a date and all that stuff, how do you determine an opponent? Is that something, we know Connor has the power, he could probably, just point to whoever he wants, and I'm sure the UFC would be on board. But what's kind of the process in ultimately determining, who and when he will come back?
I think that's a process that Connor's going to determine with his coaches, right? And I'm sure he'll ask me, and he will ask me a couple questions, but ultimately it's how he feels. So I think most importantly, it's making sure that he's coming back and he's not rushing into it. That's the bottom line. So however that unfolds and how that plays out, we'll discuss it as a team. We'll allow him to lead us with his thoughts, his ambitions, his goals, his desires, and then we'll help formulate a plan.
And I find it really interesting. Charles Oliveira, of course, he's fighting Islam Makhachev coming up in October, but he's the one who says over and over, I want to fight Connor. That's the fight for me. I deserve this fight. I deserve this payday, all that kind of stuff. That must kind of, perk the ears up knowing that he could possibly just walk right back into a lightweight title fight.
I mean, Connor said it best. It's red panty night when you fight him. So at the end of the day, I don't think it's changed. The color of the panties haven't changed. Ultimately, I think a lot of fighters want that. They want that payday, but they also want that experience to be able to say they fought Conor McGregor, right? At the end of the day, and they all aspire to win that fight, right? And so that's a normal thing, and I don't think anybody's shocked by that.
For sure. And a couple more clients I want to talk about before I let you go. Israel Adesanya, he seems like a guy that can be, the next kind of big crossover star to a degree. Of course, he's going to be headlining Madison Square Garden for the first time against Alex Pereira coming up here in November. What do you see as kind of, his potential? I know he's turned down some Hollywood opportunities. It seems like, fighting is very much on the forefront of his mind. But when you look at Izzy, what do you kind of see as what he is now and what he can become?
Izzy's a special athlete, special human being. Got love, so much love for him, his family, and I do think that he's constantly evolving. Now, every fight gets tougher, and I always say this: the fights don't get easier, but you'll see a true champion; they're going to get better. And so I think that he's taking this challenge seriously. He's not taking it lightly at all. And so I think that the fight against Pereira is going to be an exciting one. I think it's going to be obviously at the storied Madison Square Garden, and I think Izzy's super excited at that opportunity to be able to fight there, but more importantly, to be able to settle a score, because a lot of people are constantly obviously bringing back the previous matchup that the two had in their kickboxing days, the matchups, I should say. And he's looking forward to being able to go out there and prove everybody wrong and prove himself right. And that's what it comes down to. So I'm excited for him. I'm excited for him to go out there and show his continuous evolutionary process as a mixed martial artist, his growth since the last time those two faced each other in kickboxing. And then from a business perspective, I'm excited for what he has in store. There's a lot of things that we're working on for Izzy as it relates to his commercial endeavors, including but not limited to things in business and sponsorships and entertainment, et cetera. So, I think it's just always making sure we find that right balance that allows him to continue to work on his craft, and continue to compete, and stay active in that regard. But at the same time, too, making sure that we're pushing, all his goals and ambitions as a businessman forward as well.
What's the toughest part of, when you have guys that kind of transcend MMA and there's so many opportunities being thrown at them, just to kind of navigate what makes most sense for, their brand association and what fits into their schedule and prioritizing fighting and everything. Like, how do you guys ultimately, come to what you think makes the right decision?
Well, it's not a one size fit all answer. It needs to be very
Yeah.
organic to the athlete, right? As it relates to alignment, as it relates to what makes sense. We're big believers in making sure something is very organic. Don't go and push an athlete to do a deal with something if it doesn't make sense for them. And we have several athletes that we really encourage them to speak up about what they like and don't like, and because at the end of the day they have to be authentic in their approach. And some athletes do just want, need the money. The tough thing for MMA athletes is that they're independent contractors and they don't have income in between athletes unless they have monthly reoccurring sponsors, if you will, that are paying them on a monthly basis. So the younger athletes sometimes are stuck having to take deals just to make ends meet, right? And cover their camp costs and their living expenses in between fights. So it's a very challenging position to be in, as you get older and where you're making enough money where you're able to survive between fights. I think it's important to think of your brand in a very authentic manner and in a way that, allows you to say no to deals, even if the money was tempting, but it allows you to say no to deals because you're looking to make sure that you're authentic in your approach and your brand positioning and your alignment. And it could also open up bigger opportunities, including but not limited to potential ventures that you're involved with, right? And so the toughest part, I would say, in terms of scheduling is that MMA is not, there's no season, right? There's no clear understanding of when an athlete's going to fight. You could estimate an athlete's going to fight 2 to 4 times a year, just depending on how busy they stay and assuming no injuries. But you really can't project when exactly they're going to be on an annual basis because it varies depending on several different variables, right? So I think the most difficult part is, for our business, is to stay fluid, but making sure that we're trying to keep them busy in between fights, and while growing their brand, keeping them, active as it relates to those efforts, but also creating income for them through their sponsorship or commercial endeavors, if you will.
Yeah, that all makes sense. That's great insight. And last fighter, I need to ask you about Leon Edwards. We kind of started with him, so we'll finish with him. It seems like the Usman trilogy. I think everyone would say that makes sense. But how hard are you guys going to work with the UFC to make sure this happens? In the UK, his story. We don't need to go over every bits and pieces of it. I think anyone who's watching this probably understands what he's been through, which made that kick in that title win just that much more remarkable. But to see him, rise to this moment, how much of a priority in these upcoming discussions with the UFC? I know Dana said there's already been some discussions to make this happen and kind of give him a homecoming in the proper setting, in the proper venue.
Listen, Tim's leading us on those discussions, and they've been some preliminary talks. I do know that the UFC is definitely thinking along the same lines. There's been no objections or any thought contrary to the fact that they're looking to have it in the UK. And so I think that's great for Leon. He deserves that, right? And I heard an interview where Usman even said he wants to go to the UK, which is great to see that he's willing to go into, to be the visiting fighter, if you will, and go into Leon's backyard and take him on. I think that's phenomenal. I think, obviously there's talk about Wembley Stadium and the UK is not Southern California, so we got to factor in weather at the
Yeah.
end of the day, and you got to see, can it happen in Wembley or can it happen somewhere else? I know Anthony Joshua's fights have been in Cardiff, and that seemed to be a retractable stadium, if you will. So depending on, no matter whether it's rain or shine, the fight goes on, and I think that that seems to be a little bit more appropriate, right, for the weather conditions in the UK. But with that being said, it's gonna be electric no matter where it is, and hearing Dana say that it'll be in local time is also probably super exciting for not only UK fans but European fans alike because of the time difference that exists for the traditional pay-per-view cards that take place here. So I think it's there's a lot of different elements to that that sound exciting and sound promising, and it's just about now, you know, formalizing them and making them become a reality, which is a work in progress.
And just last thing, you talked about earlier, you were looking back at one of your early business plans and where kind of things stand now. As you guys lay things out for the next few years here, what are kind of your top goals and priorities? As the business as the whole, from the macro side, maybe the micro side, what you're trying to do for fighters. Where do you want things to be if we were to have this conversation again, in 5, 10 years?
Um, Looking forward to continuously growing, business for our clients. So what that means, maximizing their earnings in their respective sport, is maximizing their earnings outside of the respective sport, building businesses for them, creating, a lot of legacy opportunities for our clients in more than one way. And just always having the ability to look back and say, you know what, we did our best. And we put our heart and soul into those clients, and we really cared. At the end of the day, aside from the dollars and cents that we are able to generate in the scoreboard, if you will, but we really cared, and we made them better. They made us better. And I think if we're able to continuously say that, um, then we're realizing the fulfillment that we're striving for each and every day.
I appreciate that. And I really appreciate your time. I think the work you guys are doing speaks for itself. You look at the roster, you look at the fighters, what you guys have been doing for them. Nary hear a bad word said about anyone on your team. So really appreciate you doing this, Audie. I know it's rare. I know I took up more than enough of your time. So thank you so much, man. I really appreciate all the insight.
I appreciate you, Mike. I appreciate MMA Junkie. You guys have been obviously doing a great job for the sport, and you guys have been really a pillar in the MMA media and community. So thank you so much for the time. I appreciate you having me on.